is that whoever has the majority of members, meaning the most members of a single party, controls everything. They control the schedule, they control the floor, they control what legislation moves, they control whether or not you can take an up or a down vote on literally anything. They control whether or not a member of Congress can be sworn in. They control literally every aspect of the mechanics of how the House works. And the reason why I explain that is because we get a lot of questions every day about why doesn't the Speaker just do this? Why doesn't Congress just do that? And it's because the House is really, by design in the Constitution, a majoritarian institution. Whoever's in the majority controls everything. That's just how it was designed. The Senate is a slightly different setup. You've got 100 senators, whereas we have 435 members of Congress. The Senate, of course, has this rule that people know colloquially as the filibuster, which means that in order to proceed to a vote on anything, you need 60 votes. And so part of what that enables in a situation like this is that you have to reach that 60 vote threshold to actually be able to do a yes or no vote on anything. And so when people say something's being filibustered, it means they can't get past that 60 vote threshold. And I won't bore you with the whole history of it, but people don't stand on the floor and filibuster like they used to in the 19th century. It's now based on this cloture vote. So basically, this year, when the president came into office, he made it clear that he had a vast domestic policy agenda. And, you all know my politics, so I won't be shy about sharing them, but I do want all of you to know that, my view of my service for New Mexico is that it doesn't matter to me what your political affiliation is, how you think about politics. I'm here to serve all New Mexico, all New Mexicans. So I understand people will have different points of view than I do, and that is okay, because that's what democracy is about. But I am going to give you my view on how things are going and how that led us to this point. And some of that is actually because I used to be a nonpartisan budget analyst at the White House Office of Management and Budget, and because I also worked in the Senate as a staffer before I ran for office, and I worked in a Senate committee that passed the most bipartisan legislation in Congress during that congressional session. So my dedication has always been to trying to get as much good government legislation passed and to protect the people through bipartisan solutions. But it's impossible to talk about the current political moment without talking about politics, because it is so dominating the current situation. So the president took office in mid-January. As you recall, in some of our former town halls, there was a kind of shock and awe effort at the beginning of this administration to try to shove through all of these domestic policy ideas using executive orders. Doge came in, Elon Musk was taking a chainsaw to the government, and all of that kind of exploded in late spring and early summer, and much of it was being conducted illegally. It was not authorized by Congress. And I'm going to go back just to elementary school civics because I think it helps us contextualize the moment. Part of why Congress holds the purse strings, why Congress writes the budget, why Congress writes laws, is literally goes back to the Boston Tea Party. It's the idea that the reason why we fought a revolution to break our ties with the English crown is that the abusive monarchy of that century was taxing and spending money and doing things that hurt citizens here on this soil. And so in the revolution, the founding fathers, when they wrote the Constitution, explicitly gave the majority of the power of our government to the House of Representatives. Because it was a radical idea at the time. People kind of forget this, right? It wasn't just that we were breaking from monarchy and abusive king. The Senate was based on the House of Lords in Europe. They took the power and put it in the House, because that was the people's house. It was the representative body closest to the people. And so that is why so much of congressional process begins in the House. That's why the budget begins in the House. That's why congressional oversight, including the impeachment of either president or another official, starts in the House with a House investigation. It's because the idea of our democracy is based constitutionally that the power should be with the people. That's just how they wrote it. And the reason why I'm sort of reiterating that basic civics lesson is that the House has been shut down for 4 weeks now. So you can't cut a deal if the House is closed, because constitutionally the House controls the process. So while I appreciate that my colleagues across the aisle are going on TV every day and saying, oh, we gotta get Senate Democrats to vote for this, short-term CR that we passed a month ago, it's just literally not how it works. They shut down the House. They have locked us out. I have gone back and forth 10 times between New Mexico and DC over the last month and a half, and I can tell you the doors are physically locked. The House is shut down. We are not in session. They have shut it down, locked it out, and the Speaker has told the Republican members of the House to not come back to Washington, D.C. So there is no way, there is no even viable pathway to cut a deal until the House comes back into session. So, at the most basic level, if you walk away from this session with nothing else than just like being reminded what we learned in, elementary school about Schoolhouse Rock and how Congress works, I want to get back to work. Trust me, I do not want to be flying back and forth to DC to, go face locked doors every week. And that's why, House Democrats are continuing to go back every single week. It's like knocking your head against a wall because we can't do anything if they won't unlock the doors and call us back in session. So we are trying to continue to apply public pressure and to continue to have conversations. But in addition to completely locking us out, they are not engaging in conversation. In fact, the leadership, the Democratic leadership in the House and the Democratic leadership in the Senate have not even heard from the president or Republican leadership in over a month. Not even a phone call. So what that should tell you is that they don't want to reopen the government. Because if they did, they would bring us back, they would be calling our leadership to try to cut a deal, and they would be working on rewriting texts that would actually fund the government and deal with the healthcare crisis, and none of those things are happening right now. So, the only things we can do in this situation is continue to exercise our democratic rights, to show up, to speak out, and to try to raise public knowledge about the process and raising our voices. And what we can do as the leaders for our communities is try our best to make sure that you are empowered with information and that we, to the best of our ability, make sure that New Mexicans are okay. So let me just say, starting in January, they began, the new leadership of the House and the president began working on their big domestic policy agenda. They spent all of the first 7 months of this year working on that bill. It was a 1,000-page bill. They intentionally named it the Big Beautiful Bill. I call it the Big Ugly Bill because of its impacts on the American people. But I want to outline a few things quickly that ended up in that domestic policy agenda because it directly bears on the shutdown and what we're facing right now. They took every idea that they had been working on, not just for the last several years, but many of these ideas which you see reflected in Project 2025, that were reflected in the final bill, were ideas that had been in the making for decades. If you go back to the Paul Ryan years, or even back to the Reagan years, the idea of dismantling social safety net programs is something that the GOP and the conservative agenda has wanted to do for many years. And at the end of the day, if you had to summarize what they put in that 1,000-page bill, it goes something like this. They gave the largest cuts in taxes to billionaires and millionaires in American history. You can go read the bill for yourself. You don't even have to take my word for it. It includes tax breaks for things like lunches on yachts. It literally includes things like that. And it had the largest cuts in social safety net programs in American history. It cut over $1.5 trillion out of our healthcare system. It changed the requirements around Medicaid such that $1 trillion in funding for Medicaid would be lost out of the system. And it's primarily by changing the way that the benefits are administered such that it's just really hard to stay on Medicaid. So if you are a low-income person, you're a person that's sick, you are now going to be forced to jump through so many hoops that their expectation is that something like 15 million Americans will stop getting health care, and therefore that's how they plan to save money. That is literally the premise of their Medicaid cuts. They also, because there was so much spending for those billionaire tax breaks, there is a rule in the law that you have mandatory cuts to Medicare if you spend too much money in the deficit. Well, they spent so much money, they went on such a spending spree that it now cuts Medicare by $500 billion as well. And the way that they're going to administer those cuts to Medicare is by cutting back on services, pre-authorizations, prescription drugs, and increasing co-pays for basic programs and services. So our seniors are going to see major impacts from those cuts to Medicare. And they made changes to the Affordable Care Act, which folks know as Obamacare. And if you recall from the summertime, during the debates last year, when the current president went on TV and they asked him about what he was going to do with the Affordable Care Act, he said he had concepts of a plan. Well, his concepts of a plan turned into the largest cut in the Affordable Care Act since its passage. And as a result of what they did, they cut federal subsidies that make health insurance affordable, and they restructured the program. And what that means for all of you is that if you receive private health insurance through the marketplace, you're about to see your premiums skyrocket. So I'm on the marketplace. I've been on the marketplace since I was a self-employed, just regular old New Mexican. I'm also on the marketplace because I'm a member of Congress and they make us. And so starting November 1, you're going to go on the portal to go do open enrollment. And we're going to get into a little bit of the technical aspect because New Mexico's trying to attenuate some of the issues. But we're likely to see healthcare premiums across the country in some states where they've already announced. We haven't gotten quite there yet. I think November 1 is our deadline. But other states had October 15th. There's states that literally had a tripling of premiums. So if you were paying $300 a month, you're now seeing premiums that are $900 or $1,000 a month. And as somebody who grew up in a low-income family and a working-class family, I know that that's not affordable. So part of why Democrats are trying to hold the line right now in passing a budget to get the government reopened is that if we don't fix the subsidy issue, literally tens of millions of Americans are no longer going to be able to afford health insurance, and that is on top of Medicaid and Medicare cuts. So when you add it all up, we're looking at tens of millions of Americans losing health care. And if you think that doesn't affect you, let me tell you, it's going to affect every single person in this room, because our healthcare system is not going to be sustainable when they cut that kind of funding out of the system. Rural clinics, hospitals, private practitioners will go out of business because they basically cannot afford to be in business anymore. So this is literally a pending crisis. The Republicans are trying to say, oh, it's not a big deal, it doesn't even matter until the end of the year. Well, it is a big deal because in about a week and a half, you all are going to have to go online and buy your health insurance, and you're going to see those premiums. And you're going to have to decide on January 1, am I going to be able to afford health insurance or my mortgage? That is literally the decision that millions of Americans are going to have to make in a week. And that's not okay. So if people ask you why we're fighting, we're literally fighting so that you have dignity, health care, can remain housed, and have food on your table. And that is why we're fighting. So they spent all year preparing that domestic policy agenda. The president and the speaker did not get it done before July 4th, and so they actually asked us to come back during a recess. And so again, when you hear like, oh, the speaker could reopen the House anytime, they literally forced 435 members of Congress to fly back to DC so that they could pass their domestic policy agenda the week of 4th of July. And now they've shut the House down for 4 weeks in a row and are saying that they can't reopen the House. I use a lot of swear words. I'm going to drop a few tonight. Let me just say that's fucking bullshit. Because they control Congress, they control the House, they control the process, they control the votes. So if they wanted to reopen things, if they wanted to address the healthcare crisis, and trust me, if they can find $4 trillion for billionaires to take lunch tax breaks on their yachts, they can find money to make sure that you still have health insurance. So that is what we're fighting for right now. So, fast forward, they passed their domestic policy agenda. They should have finalized the budget in the last weeks of July, but unfortunately, part of what was also going on in Congress is we opened a bipartisan investigation into the Epstein case. And I know a lot of people know about it, it's obviously everywhere in the news, but I just want to take a moment to explain why this case is important and what the implications are politically, and why we believe that is also driving them to keep the House closed. The Epstein case is potentially the largest sex abuse scandal in American history. There are potentially thousands of victims of rape and sexual abuse. And it was not just perpetrated by Jeffrey Epstein and his partner, it was perpetrated by dozens of his friends, including both Republicans and Democrats, high-ranking officials, and the FBI investigated the case, and the investigating attorney and investigator recommended federal prosecution and decided to drop the charges. And as a result of that, Epstein was slapped on the wrist and continued to sex traffic and to abuse women for years afterwards. There was a massive miscarriage of justice, and it's very clear that in this case there are people implicated at all levels of government, including potentially the president himself. The president was notified by his own Department of Justice in May that he is in the files and all over the files. He was very close to Jeffrey Epstein. We don't know the nature of it because the DOJ has not released the files, but there is evidence that Jeffrey Epstein was also involved in transnational financial crimes for decades. And there's also evidence that the president was involved in financial crimes, potentially with Jeffrey Epstein. So there are a lot of unanswered questions, but part of why this case is a big deal is it's not just about what it is, getting justice for the victims who had this massive miscarriage of justice that let dozens of people go free and allowed the crimes to continue. This is as serious as potentially Watergate, and the continued cover-up by the White House, the Department of Justice, and now Congress are as significant and probably more so historically than what happened during the Watergate scandal. So part of why the Epstein situation is playing so large in this whole arena is that at this point in time, we know that part of why the Speaker is not bringing the House back into session is not just because he doesn't want to reopen the government and cut a deal, but also because as soon as he does, he will be obligated to swear in a newly elected Democratic member from Arizona named Adelita Grijalva, who is now 4 weeks into being elected and still not seated in Congress. And once she is elected, she will sign a discharge petition forcing Congress to take a vote on the release of the Epstein files. It will be a vote immediately on the House floor right after she is sworn in. They do not want that to happen because the president is personally threatening Republican members of Congress that he does not want them to have to take a vote on that. Now, I want to be clear, we've already subpoenaed the files, and the White House is not in compliance with the subpoena, but this is all about politics at this point, because there are crimes that have been committed, there is a cover-up involved, and at this point, we do believe that part of why the House is being kept out of session is to shield the White House from having to face a vote on the Epstein files. So we are literally living through history. This will be in the history books. We will look back and read on this and say, oh my God, I don't know how we lived through all this. It is crazy times, but that is how that case is implicated in everything else that's going on. It's not just a sideshow, it is literally at the heart of crimes that we believe that even administration officials are involved in. So that is part of why that case is looming so large here. So that's all this dark and scary stuff. They shut down the government. They're threatening federal workers. I think last time I was here a few weeks ago, I told you all that we filed a preemptive lawsuit through the Federal Worker Union to prevent the administration from conducting mass firings. We won. We won the case. Because it turns out they cannot do that. And so there is currently a temporary restraining order against the administration. They're still threatening to fire people. They're still sending out RIF notices. But if you are a federal worker, we want you to know that you are protected. Please contact our office. We will put you in touch with the unions and lawyers who are working on that case. And then, I do want to say that there are a lot of resources right now for federal workers. We don't want federal workers to go without. My staff are federal workers. I'm a federal worker. None of us are getting paid right now. We are all here serving the people unpaid, including myself. But that's our job, and that's what we do. We show up for the people, just like TSA agents, just like law enforcement, just like all the other essential employees. And we're going to continue to do that. But if you're a federal worker who's furloughed or not getting paid, a lot of our local credit unions are giving no interest loans against your paycheck. So if you've got a mortgage payment coming up, you've got rent, you need groceries, you need to buy gas, we really encourage you to contact the Federal Credit Union. They will help you out. We are also working with our food banks, and a number of food banks are doing special accommodations for federal workers. Some of our food banks are taking a very liberal approach to qualifying income because they have some discretion. So if your income is zero right now, you probably qualify for food assistance. And I know that may seem like a little scary if you've never been to a food bank. It's just like going grocery shopping. You can just drive up, and Roadrunner Food Bank and food pantries all over the state right now are providing those services. P&M, New Mexico Gas, and our utilities are also providing accommodation to federal workers. So there's a lot of assistance right now. If you're a federal worker, please reach out. We can help you figure out how to navigate this, but don't freak out about your financial situation. There's a lot of resources. So, that said, in all this sea of darkness, there happens to be one light in the country, which is the state of New Mexico. And I want to be very clear, that is in part because we have an amazing governor who really, truly understands our people and understands the consequences of what's happening, and is, I think, in some ways uniquely skilled to be prepared for this moment. And over the course of the summer, she started convening us, the members of Congress, to meet with her weekly to talk about what to do if the Big Ugly Bill passed. And she took the initiative then to reach out to state legislators and say, I'm going to convene a special session and try to fix this before we end up in an emergency. So 3 weeks ago, our legislative leadership and our governor held a 2-day special session. They passed 5 bills, and of the things that they chose to address in that special session, which I think at the time it was right before the shutdown, actually it was at the shutdown, yeah, It was the same day as the shutdown. It was fortuitous. Was to address healthcare, food assistance, access to vaccines, and public media. And I'll just quickly say a few things, and then I'm going to pass it to the cabinet secretaries to talk about how the state is trying to address the crisis. On food assistance, there was emergency legislation passed to help make sure that New Mexico families would have access to emergency food should something bad happen. Guess what? Something bad happened. Also, because part of what the Big Ugly Bill did was restructure SNAP benefits, requiring new work benefits, what we call paperwork requirements. I mean, if any of you have ever been on public assistance, I've been on public assistance, let me tell you, it's a bitch. You have to, as it already is, right? Like, you gotta go in and prove your income and deal with the bureaucracy. What they just passed is to make it even harder to stay qualified. And so the state chose to proactively try to update its systems to make it easier for you to stay qualified so you don't lose your assistance. The state also, through income stabilization, chose to use some of our money that we've gotten through natural resources on public lands to shore up health insurance for the next 6 months, in case the subsidies did not get reauthorized. Guess what? They didn't. So New Mexico was very proactive. There was also legislation put forward following on the governor's universal prescription for vaccines to protect your access to vaccines. I don't know if you guys know this, New Mexico is the only state in the United States where you can get your COVID vaccine. Did you know that? We are the only state that has done that, and that's because the governor had a universal prescription written for all of us. Because they cut off our prescriptions. And then finally, as far as we can tell, New Mexico is the only state in the country that really understood that public broadcasting, both radio and TV, are the foundation of access to a free and fair press. And our local radio stations, especially in tribal communities and in rural areas, are the only emergency and news information that a lot of people have. And so our legislature actually allocated money to make up for the cuts that the administration put into place. So, taken together, we are the only state in the country to pass a comprehensive legislative plan to protect New Mexicans. And so, with that long introduction, I want to now pass the mic to Secretary Armijo to talk more about what we're doing as a state to help New Mexicans get through these challenging times in terms of both healthcare, food assistance, and TANF, which is financial assistance, and then to our superintendent to talk about what's going to happen with health insurance. So let's hear a round of applause for Secretary Armijo.
Just really grateful for your service during this very turbulent time in our history. I really appreciate that. Thank you. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what's going on with food benefits as we face, the shutdown, because there are some really immediate potential impacts. New Mexico is preparing for the possibility of SNAP benefit delays for the month of November. And what this means, this would affect 460,000 New Mexicans, about 23% of our state's population. These are people who depend on the SNAP program to put food on the table, feed their families every day. And I always like to think about food as essential for living. We really cannot go without food. It is just as important as healthcare and even more immediate in terms of that need. We know that any delay in SNAP benefits, really what that means is children missing meals, elderly families or elderly individuals going without groceries, and families wondering how they're going to stretch those dollars. And we know groceries are becoming really expensive in our country. I also want to articulate that impact in terms of New Mexico's economy. We have about 1,700 SNAP retailers, every grocery store, farmer's market, gas station and convenience store, is a SNAP retailer, and we issue about $90 million in SNAP benefits to New Mexico's economy every month. And so this is a pretty big impact if, in fact, those benefits are going to be delayed. And as the Congresswoman said, we have been notified by the federal government that there's a potential that the benefits will be delayed. We've actually been instructed to hold our benefit files from being issued. And so what New Mexico is doing, I have a boss that is has very high expectations. The governor has told me to leave no stone unturned in terms of food support for New Mexico. So we are really looking at every option, every bucket of money that we can access. We will have an emergency food plan for New Mexico, and we will be letting our customers know, our SNAP customers know what to expect very soon. As soon as we really understand that this is a very volatile situation, that we're really trying to make sure that we get communication out very quickly, and really make sure that they understand where they can access additional food support. That will include places like schools. We're looking for donations from grocery stores, from farmers. We are exploring higher education opportunities, our daycare centers. So we're really exploring all of that and partnering up as best we can across New Mexico. And that is one of our strengths here in the state, is really being able to do amazing things like coming together. So we are very focused on that. And I hope if anyone here is on SNAP, please do not stay away from our agency. Please come see us. We are available to provide additional support. We work very, very closely with our food banks, providing additional support that way, making sure that they are ready to increase their food orders and make sure that their supply is strong. So we are here for you, and we have field offices all over the state. Our website is yes.nm.gov. We have a 1-800 number. I'm happy to get that out as well. But really, we are available for you. Please do not stay away. See if we can help you. So come see us. So that's about food. I wanted to just make sure that you all know that we are standing ready to support you all. And as Congresswoman Stansbury said, we are also looking ahead and proactively planning for what's to come with the Big Ugly Bill. Kind of agree with you about that adjective. I've worked 25 years for the same agency, put my whole career into Medicaid and SNAP, and really believe in the strength of these programs. I too have been a beneficiary customer at one point in my life, and really believe in the possibility to change lives. Many of us wouldn't be where we are today without these programs. So, I'm very, very proud to be a New Mexican. We are the only state that's, as the Congresswoman said, really put together a comprehensive plan. Many states are also facing very serious budget shortfalls right now and are cutting their Medicaid programs because Medicaid is quite expensive. And so we are not doing that in New Mexico. If anything, we're really trying to just invest heavily in these programs. Medicaid is not directly impacted right now by the shutdown, so I just want to reassure folks about that. But we are looking ahead to changes to Medicaid that are coming over the next 15 months. So I'll talk a little bit about what happened in the special session and turn it over to Superintendent Kane. The governor and the legislature worked together here in New Mexico to deploy $162 million in emergency funds that are really there to protect our food and healthcare programs due to these looming federal cuts. We are making additional investments in SNAP. One of the things that we're doing is making sure that we can provide supplemental SNAP benefits that are funded by the state for our seniors and people with disabilities. So additional support for those food insecure populations, and then building up that food bank infrastructure. So there's extra funding for food banks. There's also funding for New Mexicans who are actively, this is actually, there are changes that happened this month due to the federal bill that change how SNAP is calculated for certain households, and who is covered by SNAP, including people who are immigrants who are in our country legally but who are losing SNAP eligibility. So we are standing ready to protect those populations and their access to food. We provided $50 million to shore up and stabilize our healthcare system. So our providers, particularly in rural areas, we do not want to see this shrinkage of our healthcare system. We want to make sure that it stands ready to support New Mexico's healthcare. Many of our safety net providers are very deeply impacted by these federal cuts. New Mexico stands to lose $8.5 billion over the next decade in hospital funding. So we are really trying to focus on making sure our hospitals are stable and ready to serve New Mexico. And we know that communities without hospitals, that means bad things for people who live in those communities. And so we're providing that additional support, $50 million in grants for rural healthcare providers. And then lastly, and I'll turn things over to Superintendent Kane, we are the only state in the country that is also standing ready to provide that additional premium relief for New Mexicans that are buying their coverage through Be Well New Mexico. We are trying to avoid triple-digit premium increases and major losses in coverage. And as the Congresswoman stated, those losses in coverage affect every single New Mexican in the form of higher costs, additional premium increases, deductibles, all the things that are painful about health insurance, those will increase for every single New Mexican, because when you start to have covered lives, those cost pressures build up elsewhere, and so everyone else kind of pays the price. And so really achieving stability in Medicaid and our private marketplace is going to be essential for New Mexico's healthcare system. And so I'll let Superintendent describe those changes in greater detail. Thank you.
Thank you, Congresswoman, for this moment. The healthcare exchange, people have heard about the Affordable Care Act. Some people call it Obamacare. We call it the Affordable Care Act right now. We have over 70,000 people on the exchange buying from the marketplace. And health insurance costs are going up just in general because the experience is going up. And we had a rate increase before we even dealt with the subsidies of around 37% for the individual market, and I think about 17% for the group market, the small group market. But the enhanced premium federal subsidies is what this whole shutdown is about. This is a very technical piece, and it's not usual that the insurance department is a centerpiece to a government shutdown. But this is what's going on in 50 states, and all 50 insurance commissioners have urged that these enhanced premium subsidies be continued. Red, blue, purple, all 50 have been pushing this. Our state had foresight. In the January session, there was concern that this could happen, and there was $35 million of funding appropriated to cover the expiration of these federal enhanced premium subsidies. The special session, these were covering, and this is a technical term, and I apologize, Congressman, but the federal property level up to 300% is covered by that $35 million appropriation. They looked around, we saw that the increases could be triple-digit for households. So in the special session, another $17 million of funding was given to cover people over the 400% poverty level. These state subsidies are in effect through the fiscal year, so and we're going to have to apologize. Hopefully we'll get our systems all in place, but these changes have been happening so quickly. So when you get on the portal, we think there'll be clarity through people through the 300%, over 400% because it just changed. We're trying to play catch up, and we're going to be advising everybody to call Be Well, and I think Secretary Armijo has the numbers and the domain to call, but there are trained agents that are going to help people really navigate this situation to decide whether you keep the plan you have or you change the plan because it's more beneficial. So again, The state is there. You will probably, people, if they stay in the same plan, will probably be even for the next 6 months. So the appropriation is going to cover premiums from January to July. That's already in place. And we know that the governor and the health care authority are going to be asking for an additional 12 months. So there should be, hopefully there'll be 18 months of coverage during this process to give people some stability and to see where the federal government ultimately goes. I think the Congresswoman and Secretary Liu said something that's really important. There are about 20 million around the country that are on the healthcare exchange. We have over 70,000. When you start pulling pieces out, like in Medicare and Medicaid, I'm on Medicare. I mean, I'm going to beg to get put on the state employee policy, but I'm on Medicare. But that means that there's no, that people aren't, that the providers aren't being paid, the hospitals aren't being paid, the providers aren't being paid. There's still going to be costs because people are going to go into emergency rooms. And one of the reasons the Affordable Care Act came into place is because people were going into emergency rooms. It was costing money, and there was none of the preventive normal maintenance that you get for handling your chronic illnesses. So it's being presented as a small number. It's a big impact, and it's part of the other parts of the impact. The other thing people keep on saying is that these subsidies are used to pay for health care for illegal aliens. That is not true. You have to be legal to get onto the exchange. It's always been that way. It's the same for Medicaid and Medicare. So that's a lot. I don't know how else to say it. That's a lot. So anyway, so this is what's going on. Your state is, as I said, the only state that's backfilling the loss of these subsidies, and you should be able to maintain your insurance if you're on the exchange at pretty much the same premium level as you had before. So thank the governor and the legislature.
Isn't it nice to have smart, competent women? This is what government should actually look like. Yes. It's complicated. It's extremely complicated, especially the health insurance situation. But, if I can, zoom back out, because healthcare is something everybody cares about. And, as it was even illustrated by the three of us, the way that we access healthcare is through many different means. And I am a person who believes strongly in universal healthcare. I would like to see the end result of this political insanity put pressure on government in the coming years when we retake the House and retake the White House to restructure the entire healthcare system, because the current system is not sustainable, no matter how you look at it and how you slice and dice it, but it's what we got at the moment. And what we got at the moment, we got to preserve every inch of it or people will die. And what I want to just say is that I know it's a lot of complicated information that we just threw out at you, but if you are receiving Medicaid or Medicare, your benefits should not change in the next few months, but they will potentially change next year. If you are on the healthcare exchange, you may see an increase in your premiums when you go on November 1st due to the increase in premiums in general, but the state did help subsidize the exorbitant increases that would have happened because of the federal subsidies. And then for those of you that are on private insurance, you probably are also going to see your healthcare go up. But the point is that the $1.5 trillion that they took out of the healthcare system in the big ugly bill has the potential to collapse the entire healthcare system in the country. It's just not sustainable. So it is my anticipation, this is the first fight because this is the first deadline, but I do strongly believe they're going to have to continue to repeal these provisions because it's just not sustainable. So it's really important that we hold our ground and we fight this fight because this is just the first of many fights we're going to be fighting. So with that, I want to open it up for questions to you all. I know that our folks have mics. I think I see Dylan and Ebony with mics in the audience. Please raise your hand. What we'll do so that we can get to as many questions as possible is we'll take about five at a time. So they're going to walk around. We'll take the first 5, and you can put your hand down, and then we'll do another round, and so on until we get through. So, all right, let's go ahead. Would you be okay if I borrowed that pen?
Excuse me. Yeah, my name is Robert Steele. Firstly, I want to say is thank you for the daily updates. I really feel like I know a lot more than a lot of people across the country because of it. And I was just listening before you said that we have intelligent women up there. We need 435 Stansbury-esque. They've been able to flood the zone very effectively, and that's something that people haven't been able to keep up with. I've come up with a campaign of poetry. I met you last year when Joaquin Baca got elected. Okay, so this is one of my, that I did No Kings in Santa Fe. So let's talk about how this country is being run. There's a few who can battle, and it's not no brilliance, and it comes out of tongue. You can see the double speak and lies as it comes. Red, white, and blue, for as far as the eye can see. Oh, glory, should it be wars or rag? See, my ancestors not only fought, but died for that flag. The lies you have told and made us believe about how that man is that different from me. Well, I've heard it been said that it all comes on bread, and the power right here, it is plain to see. It is the power that lies between you and me. And the power of that word, a real pop quiz, the word lies is the one that brought it. And it is the word that can give you rest, or it can be a word that causes dissent.
All right.
There was one time to the clown who wore a polo hat. The difference between this clown and the many I have seen in this church we call life is the venom he was dead was full of blood and hate. The dreams he would speak of work for his golden calf. Soon more times the Bible has books, misogynistic ways he grabbed by the puss. Thank you for your time.
All right, that's how we roll. Poetry readings at town halls. Yeah, I like it. All right. You guys?
Right here.
And the one thing I just asked, I love the poetry. Let's keep our questions short so that everyone gets to ask a question who wants to. So,
Thank you.
yes, thank you.
I'm John Rose, and I was wondering, so they were talking about redrawing the districts and taxes so that there'd be more Republican representatives in House of Representatives. So I was wondering, I heard something about New York and California also doing the same thing.
Yep.
So I was wondering what's happening with that.
Yep. All right, we'll take 4 more, and then we'll do rapid response, and then take 5 more.
Question for Secretary Armijo. You know, there's a lot of us who are deeply concerned about what's happening at CYFD. This year so far, I believe 3 children, 3 infants have already been killed by their parents. And I think 2 of those children came under the auspices of CYFD. Is there no way in the budget, in the state budget in New Mexico, to be able to pay very excellent salaries to our social workers who are actually meeting with these parents, checking in on them, checking in on children? There's a lot of us who get really, we feel deeply hurt when we hear these stories about the abuse of babies, young children, who are supposed to have social workers working for them, looking out for them, protecting them. Is there, I'm just wondering how your department is working directly with CYFD to make sure that there are enough people in the field and those people are being paid an excellent salary, not just to get by, whatever they can, to do this, what I imagine was a very, very difficult job. Thank you.
Thank you.
My question is about the labs, Sandy Lab and Los Alamos.
Can you raise your hand if you're speaking so we can see you? There you are. Oh, great. Okay.
Yeah, I know people that are working at both Sandy Labs and Los Alamos that are being told that they're being furloughed without pay. And I know Senator Heinrich addressed this to some extent, I think trying to find bond funding. But I know that, for instance, Los Alamos is, many people in Espanol work at a lot of jobs up there, so that's going to totally affect northern New Mexico, and then it's going to definitely affect Albuquerque.
Thank you.
One more on this side and then over there.
Okay. Yep.
Congresswoman, thank you very much for being here. I commend you on how hard you're working through all of this. I see all your social media. My name is Josh Price. You know, I'm a realtor. I'm also a property manager, and my questions are mainly based off of that. I have a lot of tenants that are very concerned with whether their rent may be paid because it's paid through subsidies moving forward. City of Albuquerque was almost 2 months late and rents a couple of months ago because they updated a computer system. Not to mention those rents, real estate transactions aren't necessarily being done because of VA loans, FHA requirements, other things, you know, within, you know, government purview. So I'd like to hear kind of what's happened with that, and I'd love to talk to you more about flood insurance and just basic insurance for homeowners insurance. People have been dropped all over our state for non-renewals for speculative disasters that haven't happened yet, and it's a big problem. So I'd love to hear your response on that. Thank you.
It's a good one. All right, one more and then we'll do the next round after we answer the first round. Do we have
Thank you so much again for bringing the attention about housing, because that was going to be one of my questions. And I do appreciate that you addressed SNAP insurance. But my question was also going to be about housing. I actually manage a helpline, and I'm starting to see an increase in the types of calls that we're getting, like a change in the types of calls that we're getting, particularly from senior populations, so 65 or older. And previously, they were calling for things like looking for community centers, looking for people that could potentially help with install ramps or handles for their showers or things like that. But just more recently, I'm starting to get an uptick in calls from individuals looking for rental assistance, 65 or older, mind you. Rental assistance, food assistance, utility assistance, and the like. And so that's particularly very concerning to me because I don't know what to tell them.
Thank you so much. All right, I'll take the first round and then, oh yeah, we have multiple ones, sorry.
Okay, I don't know why I'm trying to take that. All right, these are excellent questions. So the first question was about what is happening with redistricting. Just top level, because of the big ugly bill, the week after it was signed into law in July, there was national polling done on the mood of Americans, and the mood was bad. And the mood showed that in the midterm elections, because of the policy changes after the big ugly bill, that not only were Republicans going to lose the midterms, they were going to get eviscerated. That's literally what the polling shows under the current maps. And so the week after, Donald Trump literally got on the phone and started calling Republican governors and Republican legislators and saying, we want you to basically redraw your congressional maps to find me enough seats to keep the House. Now, that is extremely unusual. The way the Constitution lays it out is that you do redistricting after the census. The census happens every 10 years. Redistricting has already occurred in every state in the country. So to do redistricting right now can only be described as trying to rig the election. There is no reason, unless states violated the law in the first place in their districts, to redistrict unless you're trying to rig the election, and that is what they're trying to do.
So they already passed redistricted maps in Texas. Many of you saw the high stakes, high drama situation that happened in Texas. Those maps are illegal under the Voting Rights Act. They're currently in the courts, and I'll come back to that in just a second. Today, they just passed new illegal maps in North Carolina. North Carolina and Texas both have a history of illegal maps. And they're also trying to redistrict in Kansas, Missouri, Indiana, Illinois, and 2 other states, but I can't think of who they are. Ohio, and there's one other one. Indiana, yeah. Louisiana. Oh, I had not heard about Louisiana. Okay, well, add another one. So, basically, literally, the president has been calling states and telling them to redraw their maps. States can choose to redraw their maps, but they still have to follow federal law. So in addition to trying to rig the maps, they are now going after the law that protects the maps, and that's the Voting Rights Act. In 1965, in the wake of the Civil Rights Movement, Congress passed the Civil Rights Act to make sure that congressional districts were not gerrymandered to prevent especially Black populations from having representation. That was the purpose of the Voting Rights Act. And the Supreme Court heard oral arguments last week in a Louisiana case that we believe could potentially undermine the Voting Rights Act this summer. If the Supreme Court undermines the Voting Rights Act and they succeed in redrawing maps all over the country, next year's elections are going to be a mess. Not only will they be a mess, they'll be indecisive because, for example, it's pretty cut and dry right now. Texas violated the Voting Rights Act with their redistricting that they did last month or whenever it was. But if the Supreme Court hands down a decision in May or June that undermines a ruling, a lower court ruling, then Texas may redraw their maps again in the middle of the summer, months before the November election. So it's hard to wrap your mind around it. It's so messy. But there are states, Democratic states, that are saying, well, if they're going to do this, then they're violating the Voting Rights Act, then we have a responsibility to nationally rebalance the maps. And so California has put a proposition on the ballot that they are actively voting on right now called Proposition 50. And the governor and the legislature already passed legislation that allows California to redistrict as long as the people vote to say yes. So if, for example, you care about fair voting maps, get involved in Prop 50. They're looking for folks to make phone calls and help out there. But there are other states. Illinois is another Democratic-controlled state that is looking at potentially redistricting. New York, unfortunately, cannot because it would require a constitutional amendment. But all over the country now, it's kind of created a race to the bottom, to be honest. So it's a mess, and it's not fun. I'm sorry, I don't have other news. I'm going to let you, if you feel comfortable, talk about CYFD. I'll just say this. This is not the Secretary of CYFD, it's a different department. But there were a number of proposals for reform of CYFD that have been introduced in the legislature, the last few legislatures, but there hasn't been a kind of bipartisan consensus that is totally formed between the legislators and the governor's office and the agency to get to a point to reform wholesale system. But you're absolutely right, and we need to be paying social workers better and fix the system because it is unacceptable for children to suffer because we can't get our act together.
Yeah. Thank you. Not the CYFD Secretary, but Congressperson says I do work very closely with that agency, and I thank you for paying attention to this really important issue and for paying attention to the kids of New Mexico who really need folks to be looking out for them, so thank you for that. I do agree with you that the CYFD frontline workforce, the investigators, the people who are going into homes with the goal of protecting children have got those jobs. 100%, I think. what they do is incredible. And they do deserve to be paid top-rate salaries. I think there's no disagreement there. I will say that the governor has tasked the Health and Human Services agencies for New Mexico to really work shoulder to shoulder with CYFD to try and come up with ideas and options for supporting that agency, really kind of taking a closer look at cases. As we're doing a lot of cross-agency casework with the Department of Health, my agency as a healthcare authority, even the public education department and the early education, childhood education and care department. We're working really closely with CYFD almost daily, including doing case staffings to really monitor the situation for our kids here in New Mexico. So hopefully that provides a little reassurance, and I do know that managing caseloads and investing in staffing is one of their top priorities. They have really asked for support from the legislature, so as a New Mexican, I know they could use that support when the session comes around for their budget, and your advocacy to support their request to the legislature here in New Mexico. Thanks.
And I'll just add, I mean, for anyone that is following and tracking this issue, you know that children who suffer because their families are struggling, are engaged in abuse or neglect, it's often a symptom of other issues going on in the family and often substance abuse. And one of the big challenges that New Mexico is suffering from in general right now is really a substance abuse crisis. And one of the things we're doing through my congressional office in consultation with the state and the legislature and the city and the county is to try to build up the infrastructure to help people who are struggling with addiction and behavioral health issues. So through my office alone, in the 4 years that I've been in office, we helped build a new behavioral health clinic through Healthcare for the Homeless. We helped build a new behavioral health clinic through First Nations Healthcare that's in the International District. We helped build a transitional housing and behavioral health program for veterans with the city. We helped build a sobering center here in Albuquerque. So that's something that in my office we are actively pumping money in because we need more infrastructure and we need more social workers, period. And we need to pay them more. So I really appreciate that. The Sandia Los Alamos furlough question. There's a lot of mixed reporting happening right now about what is going on with the national labs and NNSA. A lot of people know the labs are here, but may not know exactly what they do. They design and make the bombs. I can't put it more plainly than that. They do a lot of other science as well, but that is what they do, and that is what they have been doing since World War II. And a lot of what they do is top secret. And the Trump administration, you may have seen 2 weeks ago, said that they were going to start dismantling, firing, and furloughing Democratic programs to punish the Democrats. And so it was announced this week that they were going to intentionally furlough NNSA workers and lab workers, and we think it's retaliatory because it's in a Democratic-controlled state. I cannot express my disdain for this without dropping an F-bomb. That is the most fucked up and stupid thing I've ever heard in my life. So, let me explain. You think Kim Jong-un and Vladimir Putin and Xi are watching the United States and not seeing right now that the President of the United States is talking about furloughing the National Nuclear Security Administration? I listened to NPR on my way over here. Vladimir Putin tested his nuclear system today. So, there's a lot of things that I disagree with politically, obviously, and policy-wise that this administration does, and this is just fucking stupid. It's endangering our national security, and it has to stop. So today, myself, Congresswoman Ledger Fernandez, and a group of members of the House sent a letter to the administration demanding that they rescind their furlough notice immediately because it threatens national security. So, I mean, this is just dangerous. I don't know what else to say about it. I'll just say that. Okay, housing. Do you have any insight on housing? Do you guys work on housing vouchers?
Well, thank you for the super important question about housing. Secretary Meyer is really taking the lead at the Department of Workforce Solutions and Initiatives, and I couldn't be here today. So I'm happy to connect and just make sure that I get information back out. I don't know if I can answer directly on housing, but if I can get your information, I will produce that for you and make sure that we follow up. So if someone can get that contact information from that individual, I will make sure that I do that, and we follow up with a good answer around seniors in particular and housing options, because there is housing in different agencies. My agency does provide behavioral health supportive housing, but it really kind of depends on the kind of housing. I do want to also say, because you were asking about SNAP and utility assistance or food assistance, thank you very much. We do provide both of those benefits through our agency, so that additional food support, and we also provide utility assistance through the healthcare authority. I will send you, I will just make sure that you have, would you like me to say the 1-800 number? Sure. So you can call us at 1-800-283-4465. We also have a website at yes.nm.gov, and we have 33 field offices all around New Mexico. So I know seniors often have hard time with technology or don't prefer to do business through online mechanics. So we have field offices and we're ready to serve any New Mexican who comes into our offices. So that is the best place to connect people to support food and utility assistance.
And I'll just add to that, as far as I understand it, but knock on wood, because you never know with these crazy people, I have not to date heard of any freezes on housing assistance and vouchers through federal programs. However, over the course of the last 10 months, the administration has cut grants through HUD to a lot of local authorities. So part of why you may be hearing more people asking for assistance is because a lot of federal grant funds dried up for local housing and HUD assistance grants to city and local entities that were administering those, along with food assistance. So this week, Ebony and Felicia and I went to the Storehouse Food Bank in Rio Rancho, for example, and they told us they lost their largest federal grant for food assistance this year. And so there are a lot of programs out there. If you have clients, friends, family members who need housing assistance, there's a lot of resources. You can send them to our office. You can go through the state. They can go to a client service like Healthcare for the Homeless has a really good intake. You don't have to be homeless. They just have really good client services right down the street. MFA, there's so many front doors to go through. So if you have folks in your world that need help with housing assistance, please contact us, and we can look into specific voucher programs. But to my knowledge, like Section 8 is not being discussed to be frozen, if that's what you're specifically asking about. Meaning, like if your rent is paid through Section 8. Flood insurance, this is a complicated one. New Mexico is experiencing climate change, and our communities are experiencing catastrophic fires and floods. And so all over the state, thousands of New Mexicans are now living in disaster zones, and private insurance has been cutting off property and house insurance. And I know that the governor has tasked our insurance agency to figure out what to do. So what are you guys doing?
Okay, whoops, am I on? Yes. Can you hear me now? Okay. Let's start with flood insurance is usually covered by FEMA. We don't know what's going to happen with FEMA, so that is a problem. A lot of families think they're in area. The whole idea of being in a flood area is totally changing. The flood maps are changing. So if you have the ability to buy flood insurance, think about it very carefully. The wildfires. We saw, obviously, the state really had a wake-up call after the Ruidoso fires, and there's been a total state response to that. There's a task force that was created by the legislature, and OSI is now on it along with the Forestry Service and the fire marshals. And we're looking at what we can do, a whole state system response, because you can't just handle these wildfire situations by hardening your home, and we'll talk about that next. But it has to be a whole state system. You need a concentration of houses that are mitigated. You need the community that's mitigated. You need the interface between the national forest and other lands cleared. You need management of your forest. And we are looking at all that, and OSI is part of it. But there's other things that have been happening. Aside from the cost of insurance, and there has been an increased cost because there is an increased risk. Wildfires are a new, not so new to New Mexico, but really a new peril that the insurance industry has really just been studying for the last 10 years. You think that's a long time for the insurance industry, that isn't. They've studied floods and other perils and hurricanes much longer. So there has been an increased cost in insurance, and there's also been a lot of non-renewals and cancellations. As in the insurance department, we can't force a company to offer policies. We can make sure that their rates are fair and equitable and actuarially sound. But we do have a residual market called the FAIR Plan. And many people have heard about the FAIR Plan in California because it was bigger when it was in financial trouble. But we have a FAIR Plan here, and we've had it since the 1960s. It was a reaction to a little history lesson to the riots in the cities. And the federal government funded the FAIR Plans and setting them up. And I think 33 states have FAIR Plans. And there's a new one that Colorado just introduced last year. Our FAIR Plan had sort of morphed into a low-income place for people to go where they couldn't get insurance, and even if they needed insurance. So we had a FAIR Plan that was providing residential coverage for up to $250,000 in homes and $1 million for commercial. My predecessor increased it to $350,000 right before she left office. And after the Ruidoso fires, frankly, one of the Republican representatives, Harlan Vincent, wrote a letter to the FAIR Plan asking to increase the residential amounts to $750,000 and the commercial amounts. There was a little resistance initially by the FAIR Plan. The FAIR Plan is not a state-run plan, but it's a state mandatory requirement if you want to write insurance in this state. The companies are assessed, and that's what's supposed to pay for to support FAIR Plan coverage. If you are in the FAIR Plan, you pay a premium, and it's in our state, it's not been higher than the market, it's been lower than the market. We're probably going to bring it up to market because we've raised the amounts. And so right now, if you can't get insurance, you can go to the residual market, the FAIR Plan, and get coverage for up to $750,000 for your home, and we raised the commercial from $1 million to $2 million. I tried to get legislation passed. Initially, it didn't get into the bill. I think we need up to $1.5 million for residential if you want to cover everybody, and I think you need up to $5 million for commercial. But we're working towards that, towards something along those lines. The other issue that we introduced legislation that got through one committee in the Senate, but
We're just about to run out of time.
okay. But we are trying to get coverage for floods after wildfires, called proximate cause, and that's going to be reintroduced because for 5 years after a burn scar, you're subject to flash floods. So we think it's part of the whole coverage for wildfires.
Awesome. I learn things every day too. Good.
So, go to the FAIR Plan if you can't get insured under normal insurance, and maybe this is something that one of our senators or legislators could help us get across the finish line, because it impacts a lot of New Mexicans. I also just say quickly, communities like Ruidoso are also doing buyout plans now, so people who are in areas that just are likely to continue to get flooded are now offering to help buy people out if it's just looking like that property is gonna get hit over and over again. Okay, we'll take just a couple quick burning questions, and then we're gonna have to get kicked out because the staff of the convention center have to go home, so.
We have time for about 3 more questions this round. Sorry about that.
Hello.
Yes, there you go.
Just a quick question about the empty plows. How confident are you that they will not be destroyed?
The what?
They will not be destroyed?
Oh, that they're not destroyed. Okay, yep.
I have a question. I'm Georgia Nessa. Raise my hand.
Oh, okay.
There you go. You gave a lot of reasons why the government won't reopen, particularly absentee files. Is there a plan or a discussion of a plan for what happens? Because Project 2025 is all about dismantling the government. It seems to me that shutting down government, not reopening it, is part of the strategy. So what if they never call Congress back? What next?
It'll reopen. I'll address that quickly. Let's just take these really super quick and I'll see if I can flash answer things.
I just want to say, first of all, I'm federally employed for 20 years. Please hold the line on this one. We are every day, and I'm working 2 jobs to make up for, I foresaw this because we've been doing this for 20 years and I read TVs. So I got myself a second job in June, knowing that this is what was going to happen. But we have to stand up to the bullies. And for the rest of you, please find a federal working family, or even better, a federal contractor, because they don't get back pay. And support them through your churches, through your schools, through your communities, find them, help them weather this storm, it's no fun. So my question is, the New York Times recently just published an investigation stating that the Trump administration is pushing for federal control over elections coming in 2026 and 2028. What is New Mexico and what are you doing to protect our election integrity and to make sure that the states have control over our elections?
Yep. All right, let's just take that, these 2 super quick, and then I'll race through answers.
Well, I have a quick question. Over here. Have a comment question.
Sorry, I have the lights in my eyes, so go ahead.
So the president can bring Hamas and Israel together to the negotiation table to end the war. I don't understand why he can't bring Democrats and Republicans to the table to open up the government. It's my comment. My question is that I understand that budget has to be passed, but is there any way to partition out things that is non-agreeable, still open the government as everything else, and then argue those issues later?
Hello, thank you so much for all of your hard work, ladies. I am part of the sandwich generation who is taking care of my senior mother and my daughter, a single mother. And it's really not about me, it's about so many Mexicans that are in my position and our seniors. Our seniors are being impacted immensely, and at the end of their lives work, they're asked to sell down all of their assets, only to be put into assisted living that cost $6,000 to $10,000 a month, where they're being treated horribly, and then after they've sold out everything, they're then put into a Medicaid funded system, which may not even exist anymore, and they're treated even worse, and a lot of times often die. So our seniors are not only running out of money, there is nobody representing them, and the families that are taking care of them are not able to survive on, we can't work and take care. I mean, caregiving is a full-time job, it's a blessing. And I'm honored to do it. I'm honored to show my daughter what family looks like and what you're supposed to do. There are programs that pay family members to take care of their elders, but it's not enough, and especially in these times, I hate to ask for anything more when so many people are already struggling. I do have a massage business. I've been a licensed massage therapist for the last 13 years, I would like to offer federal workers, 75% discount on rates, or even free massages, especially you. Thank you so much for us, and, but I just wanted to let you know, I'll pass out the cards later, but please focus on our seniors. They have worked so hard to pave the path for us, and they're being forgotten. Thank you so much.
All right. And let's take, I think there was one more hand. I do have to say, we have to let the city employees go home. So we'll take you two, but you have to be super short so that we don't get in trouble.
Okay, my name is Alex King. Thank you so much for everything that all of y'all are doing. My question is, as an average citizen, I am so frustrated about what's going on. What can we, as average citizens, what kind of pressure, what kind of leverage can we put on Mike Johnson and the Republican Party right now to open up Congress? What can we threaten them with?
I think, Sophia, there's this one gentleman in the hat who's had his hand up the whole time. Okay, you get the last word. Let's make sure it's
Thank you, Melanie, and my name is Mark Haley, and I'm a proud social worker here in New Mexico. I serve at Laguna Pueblo, as well as another school with cooperative education services, which I've been doing for the last 6 years. And I love my job. I love being a school social worker. I want to comment and say that I'm very worried about my Head Start program at Laguna Pueblo and what's going to happen when the office of Head Start isn't there at the federal level right now to be reached. So I would like that to be specifically addressed because we have a lot of kids with a lot of special needs, and we really need to make sure that compliance is understood about what that really means in this country. But what I really want to ask you, Melanie, and this is your point.
You're running out of time.
Yes, I'm running out of time. What I really want to ask you is how can we harness the energy that we see at the No More Kings rallies and other places to do something to protect our democracy, because it doesn't feel like government is working right now. And we need to have advocates that can harness the energy of the American people of New Mexico to make a difference and to change the course of this terrible history that is playing out here.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, I'm going to try to get through this as quickly as possible. The question was, how confident are we that they have not destroyed the Epstein files? I am not confident at all. And a lot of people don't really understand what the Epstein files are. This is the Department of Justice's criminal investigation into Jeffrey Epstein and his associates that Alex Acosta chose not to prosecute, which also included investigation of financial crimes in addition to sex trafficking. They have now for months refused to produce the files. It is a federal crime to destroy these documents. So, you know, when we retake the House, when we are able to enforce the law, these are items that I can assure you the Oversight Committee will be prosecuting. But there are many victims out there who have had their stories already told publicly and privately, and so we know what's in those files. And so, you know, if they did destroy the files, there are other pieces of evidence out there. The government will reopen. Even though the Republicans are being real jerks right now, they are actively working on a new CR plan, and they're fighting with each other actively over whether or not it's a short-term CR, it's a January CR, or a full-term CR. And at the point at which they finally come up with a decision and they work it out with the president, they will have to bring the House back. And the minute they bring the House back, they will have to swear in Adelita, and then we will take a vote on the Epstein files. So we shall see how that will all play out. But they're currently working on that. Thank you for the support for both seniors and for federal employees. As I mentioned at the beginning, there's a lot of resources out there. I do want to punctuate something that the secretary said about our food banks. Even with the emergency food assistance funding that we passed at the state, our food banks are already in financial and food crisis. They are running out of food. If you happen to work with a grocery store, you know somebody that owns a grocery store, you are a farmer, you know someone who's a farmer, or somebody who has access to food supplies, we beg you, please call Roadrunner Food Bank and help out. If you are interested in getting involved philanthropically, they need money. Groceries are not only more expensive for people buying them at the store, they're more expensive for food banks. So if you're looking for something to do right now, help us restock our food banks. Let's see, elections. New Mexico is the most election secure state in the country. And I'm not just saying that, we literally won the award last year. So that is 100%, again, due to the competent women who are running this state. Maggie Toulouse Oliver made sure that our state's election integrity is protected. When there are incidents that we do hear of in some of the more far-flung counties in the state where things are gone askew, she goes in right away and deals with it. I'm highly confident in New Mexico's election integrity. We passed one of the most comprehensive election laws in the entire United States 2 years ago, which also expanded access to the ballot box. So you can literally show up as an unregistered voter and vote on the spot. So we have a really, really good election system here. Other states, not so much. And election integrity is going to be a big issue. And as I'm sure has been illustrated by this town hall, there are fires on every front. I often think of, I don't know if y'all have seen the mug of the dog sitting in the basement that's on fire, and it says, "This is fine." That's our life every single day. We're fighting all of these fires, but election integrity is obviously at the heart of the 2026 elections. What I can tell you is that we have a very organized, strategic, and effective national campaign to address election integrity and voting rights. It is run by Eric Holder, who's the former AG under the Obama administration, under the National Democratic Redistricting Council. We have the best voting rights lawyers in the country working on it. Can Republicans reconvene Congress and pass a budget and set aside partisan issues for a later date? Yes, please. We welcome them to. That is what we are asking them to do. We are not even asking them to try to fix everything. The only thing that is currently at play is the Republicans getting their asses back to DC and voting on a short-term CR to reopen the government for basic operations and to fix the healthcare insurance premium issue.
What does CR mean?
A CR just means you continue operating at the same level. It doesn't change the budget levels. It's just, if you pass a continuing resolution, you just have the same budget that you had, but it's on a daily basis. So the current CR that the Republicans proposed 4 weeks ago was a 7-week CR. So the whole thing is just a stupid argument anyways. So yeah, yes, the answer is yes. That's exactly what we're asking them to do. Seniors. New Mexico is also one of the only states to create a senior care fund. I don't know, do you administer that, or is that the aging department? Do you have something short you can say about that? I can hand you this.
I think, yeah, there is a new program also for our seniors. I am not the best person, but I am happy to connect with you and get you connected to that agency. I will also say, I very much agree with the comments about quality of care in our facilities. That is something our agency oversees. The governor is very passionate about this issue and making sure that we do everything we can to make sure people living in our nursing facilities and assisted living facilities are safe. So this is very top priority for me. So I just thank you for bringing that issue up. It's really important.
Yeah, and I'll just add quickly, Governor Lujan Grisham actually was the aging secretary during the Richardson administration, and she personally, I was in the legislature when she proposed to create a senior care fund for the state. It's something she's very passionate about, but the whole system, again, is broken, similar to healthcare, but it is something that we are uniquely working on here in New Mexico, and we'd love to have your voice help inform as that's shaping up. Head Start. Head Start is one of the agencies that this administration and Project 2025 is specifically named out for elimination. We are fighting like hell. There is bipartisan support to maintain Head Start, but I think this is very revealing. One of the punishing mass firings that the administration conducted last week that was illegal was to eliminate the special ed coordinators of the Department of Education. I'm pretty confident that the court case that was filed will restore those jobs, but that just tells you where this administration's head is at. I can also tell you that here in New Mexico, we're the only state in the United States to guarantee early childhood education, and the governor's office stood up an early childhood education and care office. We invited that secretary today, but she wasn't able to come. And so we can put Laguna Head Start, I'm sure they're already in touch with the secretary, but around specific needs that the couple might have at the Head Start located there. Finally, I think there were two questions about this, which is, how do we make it stop? What can we do? I kind of go day to day between, sometimes hour to hour, sometimes minute to minute, between the feeling the empowerment of our democracy and seeing, the light at the end of the tunnel and knowing that we are going to prevail and we're going to win. And it's not just winning back the House next year. We are literally in the middle of an election right now in the state of New Mexico, in every county and city and municipality in the state. We are going to win back every mayoral election, city council election, and school board election. I think this is going to be a wipeout election for our democracy. If you haven't voted yet, please go vote. If you're looking for a concrete action you can do, tomorrow early voting session, polling stations are open everywhere across the state. That is one of the most concrete things you can do, and that may seem very local, but let me tell you this, that if we blow it out of the House on all these local elections this term, it will send a national signal. There are elections happening in Virginia, New Jersey, and the governor's races that will essentially set the course for next year's midterm elections. So if you're looking for something concrete to do now, get it involved in local elections, get involved in these big elections that have national implications, get involved in Prop 50 in California for fair redistricting. There's a lot of really important action that can be done now to get involved. In terms of trying to save our institutions and our democracy, I go back and forth between feeling like, we're going to defeat all this and we're going to rebuild not just what we had, but something greater, and some days feeling like this will be the fight of our generation. But what I can tell you is that in every chapter in which the United States has faced retrenchment, darkness, and an effort by either the president or a Congress to take us backward, the United States and our people and our citizens and our democracy have stood up. We have marched in the streets. We have exercised our democratic rights. We have said hell no, and we have not only ultimately prevailed in saving our democracy and our institutions, but pushing the progress of this nation forward. And I am confident that when this nightmare is over, we will look back with our children and grandchildren on the dark chapter that we all lived through, and we will be the architects of the most progressive era that this country has ever seen. So, please join us in that effort. Keep marching, keep speaking out, and please help us imagine that future.